The key to renovating U.S. federal government senior executive service personnel capability is the Senior Executive Guide to Software Program Management and Oversight. The U.S. federal government is losing its experienced senior management, with 1 in 4 expected to retire by 2017 and a 36% increase in departures since 2009. Forced to promote from within due to lack of interest from outside, the government must now develop its senior executives from within. The result promises to be a less experienced senior management corps to face increasingly more complex challenges. None is more challenging than software program acquisition management and oversight, and software supply chain risk management assurance, needed to face the uncertainties of the 21st century. Here, the Department of Defense and the Department of Homeland Security face a particular challenge. Here, the antidote to this leadership problem is a government initiative to broaden the skill sets of its senior managers. Whether you establish criteria at the beginning of a project or not at all, there exists industrial strength objective criteria for learning the status of a project and pointing the way forward. These criteria can be found in the Software Engineering Method and Theory, SEMAT, formulation, and its Essence Kernel, the essence and common ground of software engineering, and a major object management group, OMG, standards process. SEMAT is a giant step towards coping with the complexity of software engineering projects. It truly represents the refounding of software engineering. The profession and perhaps the world will owe visionary Ivor Jacobson a debt of gratitude before it is all over. As the long-awaited bridge between managers and software engineers, the overarching framework of the SEMAT Essence Kernel encompasses a useful and strategic way of thinking, capable of extending the range of senior executive service personnel needed to place them on an even playing field with the systems and software engineering technical practitioners they depend upon. This evolving standard of excellence characterizes the maturing of the software profession and stands on the shoulders of those who came before, yet reflects an understanding of the plight of the professional software engineers and programmers who toil in the vineyards today against mounting complexity and insufficient education. Such positioning can go a long way in bridging the generation gap, a growing influence in today's way of working. Adopting SEMAT Essence is an imperative. Why? When it comes to software, the situation is dire. Software faces challenges in trustworthiness, cybersecurity, global software competitiveness, and austerity. Recognize that competitiveness is like floodwater, finding or creating its own path. Competitiveness impacts both software and security, as it favors offshore outsourcing, and further impacts security as innovation drives towards mobile and bring-your-own-device. Recognize also that software and security are connected at the hip through the elusive attribute of trustworthiness, and together impact competitiveness in a not-so-virtuous cycle of interactions. The increasing dependence of industry and government on an immature software profession whose promise exceeds its delivery has now become a source of risk that teeters at the tipping point. The convergence of software, national security, and global competitiveness, interactions, and their fragile interdependencies are capable of unleashing a destructive synergy of propagating and cascading effects. All this while both industry and government continue to play the role of free rider as users of software lacking both the ability and will to act. The chaotic evolution of software methods has created the necessity to refound software engineering. The 1980s was heavily vested in methods as the research of Peter Freeman and Tony Wasserman revealed. And then there was Method Man from the Ada days. It was in the 1990s when process reared its ugly head, curtailed the method initiative, and forced the earlier method work off center stage with the emergence of Watts-Humphrey and CMM and later CMMI, which appears to have run its course. The evolution of software methods figure shown here by Mark Canale in his book SDLC 3.0 captures much of this. The SEMAT vision is to refound software engineering as a rigorous discipline based on a general theory of software engineering and a unifying process framework. If senior executive service personnel can successfully master the SEMAT Essence Kernel, the impact of the impending experience gap and the chaotic state of software engineering can be mitigated, and readiness to meet the software challenges of the 21st century can be assured. Balanced outcomes among customer, solution, and endeavor-centric spaces are achieved by a natural progression of state transitions among SEMAT Essence alphas. Whether you establish criteria at the beginning of a project or not at all, there exists industrial strength objective criteria for learning the status of a project and pointing the way forward. Number 1, the customer space is framed by a stakeholder, shared vision for a well-conceived value proposition for the opportunity with convincing and consequential outcomes. Number 2, the solution is bounded by stakeholder agreed-to requirements and user stories and a software system architecture that facilitates usable and operational software product. Number 3, the endeavor's work is performed by a well-selected and ready team and a way of working based on established principles and foundations. These criteria can be found in the Software Engineering Method and Theory, SEMAT, formulation and its essence kernel, the essence and common ground of software engineering, and a major object management group, OMG, standards process. The common ground of 7 dimensions, termed alphas, and the sequential states of progression associated with each alpha are the basis for refounding software engineering as a profession. The alphas and the alpha states are intended to be independent of particular methods, practices, and tools, and so possess the capability to guide progress and assess status of any software project regardless of method and practice selections. Simple yet powerful, these sensible alphas and their natural states of progression are actually very useful in guiding a project on its way and in guiding a software industry that has lost its way. More specifically, the alphas and their sequential states include: number 1, stakeholder, recognized, represented, involved, in agreement, satisfied with deployment, satisfied in use. Number 2, opportunity, identified, software needed, value established, viable, addressed, benefit accrued. Number 3, requirements, conceived, bounded, coherent, acceptable, addressed, fulfilled. Number 4, software system, architecture selected, demonstrable, usable, ready, operational, retired. Number 5, team, selected, formed, collaborating, performing, adjourned. Number 6, way of working, principles established, foundations established, in use, in place, working well, retired. Number 7, work, initiated, prepared, started, under control, concluded, closed. As the twig is bent, so grows the tree. So to get your project off on the right foot, expectations should be set and evidence should be sought on the following assertions and principles based on the following alpha state checkpoints. Stakeholders are in agreement and share a vision for the project. Number 2, an opportunity value proposition has been established and there is stakeholder shared vision for achieving it. Number 3, requirements or user stories are coherent and acceptable and there is stakeholder shared vision for them. Number 4, the software system architecture is selected and comprises a domain-specific architecture to guide software system implementation, and the software system implementation is made ready and operational with no technical debt. Number 5, the team operates in collaboration, shares a vision for the project, and is ready to perform with respect to shared vision, software engineering process, software project management, software product engineering, operations support, and domain-specific architecture, processes, methods, and tools. Number 6, the way of working by the team has established foundations for software engineering process, software project management, software product engineering, and operations support. Number 7, the work is started only when all is prepared, including coherent requirements and acceptable user stories, stakeholders in agreement, and an established foundation for the way of working. Number 8, all work products are prepared and inspected in accordance with a defined standard of excellence, assuring completeness, correctness, and consistency. It is against this backdrop of expectations derived from these assertions and principles of alpha state checkpoints that the software engineering profession begins again by systematically renewing its laser-like focus on the dimensions that deliver consequential outcomes. The requirements and software system architecture alphas serve as the twin peaks of difficulty on many projects. Yet, it is these two alphas that are systematically neglected by many agile software development advocates, preferring instead to let the stakeholders and opportunity value proposition dictate the next steps. The penalty for this neglect is the accumulation of technical debt. Sequencing alpha states in practice in accordance with an ordered baseline of states provides the means to detect root causes even before measurements are taken. Simply put, the focus here is on anticipation and avoidance. Alphas are made tangible through the use of cards that depict underlying achievements for each alpha state. A constructive approach to Essence alpha state sequencing focuses on anticipation and avoidance of known common problems encountered in software engineering projects. Using the preferred sequence of alpha states as a staged ordered baseline, this constructive approach to effectiveness analysis provides the means to detect root causes for common problems even before measurements are taken. Effective sequencing of alpha states hinges on the known effects of incomplete predecessor states on downstream successor states not yet begun or in progress. Essence alpha state stage sequencing presents a dynamic operational view useful in analyzing effectiveness and anticipating and avoiding risk leading to stakeholder dissatisfaction and technical debt. Systematic rules of construction for tracing alpha state sequencing and reasoning about their stage alignment assist in the effectiveness analysis, even pinpointing the selected milestones that serve as consequential markers of success and the risk triggers that threaten success and lead to the accumulation of technical debt. Sequencing alpha states in practice in accordance with an ordered baseline of states provides the means to detect root causes even before measurements are taken. Simply put, the focus here is on anticipation and avoidance. A real demonstration of thinking in a systems framework would be to set forth a systematic approach for tracing alpha state transitions and gather traces from real projects as they progress. Number one, a project can set goals based on expectations derived from the assertions and principles discussed earlier. Number two, the effectiveness of meeting goals is determined by tracing the alpha state transitions that occur. Number three, all this answers the question, is the project doing the right thing at the right time? Number four, certainly this effectiveness analysis takes precedence over the metrics and reasoning about improvement imperatives. Number five, such results would help projects understand how to distinguish beneficial alpha traces from the more seductive anti-patterns. Sequencing alpha states hinges on the effects of incomplete predecessor states on successor states not yet begun or in progress. The rules of construction for tracing alpha state sequencing and reasoning about their stage alignment include the following. Number one, sequence of alpha states is followed with no skipping. Number two, if all predecessor alpha states equal complete, then no risk. Number three, if the predecessor alpha stage just prior is equal to any incomplete alpha state, then there's risk. If the predecessor alpha stage more than one stage prior equals any incomplete alpha state, then there's a problem. The baseline alpha state stages used in the sequencing of alpha states by stage represent a risk-adverse baseline of expectation. A project wishing to make an explicit decision to depart from the baseline may choose to do so by constructing an ad hoc project baseline of alpha state stages and sequences. This departure from the preferred baseline is risk by design and may possess additional built-in risk. In any event, the basic rules of construction governing risk by performance still apply. Clearly, a project accepts risk when it begins a successor stage before the predecessor stage is complete. Just as clearly, a project has a problem when it completes a stage before a predecessor stage is complete and adds to its technical debt. Particular alpha states are singled out as selected milestones. When the selected milestones appear as incomplete in predecessor stages, these serve as risk triggers in successor stages, not only contributing to technical debt, but also serving as unfulfilled dependencies in downstream tasks. A rough order of magnitude relative cost for each stage indicates that while the early stages generate a smaller proportion of the cost, they comprise commitment, pointing the way, digging in, and major milestones that are necessary to lock in the gains when successive incremental releases are needed to sustain the desired frequency of release. The alpha state stage sequencing and risk protocol is shown in the tables that follow for each stage. The project kickoff is intended to initiate commitment among stakeholders to the opportunity identified and the conception of requirements. In addition, a team is selected. Chief among these is identifying the opportunity and team selection. Stage 1 is intended to point the way forward. Here, individual stakeholder personnel are identified. The opportunity involves software. The requirements are somewhat bounded, and the software system architecture concept is selected. In addition, the team has been formed and has established a way of working, and work has been initiated. The critical selected milestones revolve around bounded requirements and architecture selection. Stage 2 entails digging in as a project. Stakeholders are involved. The opportunity value proposition is established. requirements are coherent, and the software system is demonstrable and feasible. In addition, the team is collaborating. The foundations for the way of working have been established. The team is prepared to work. The critical selected milestones revolve around opportunity value, coherent requirements, and an established way of working. Stage 3 entails completing major project milestones. Stakeholders are in agreement. The opportunity is viable. Requirements are acceptable. The software system is considered usable. In addition, the team has performed an initial release. The way of working is in use, and work has started. The critical selected milestones revolve around stakeholder agreement, acceptable requirements, the team performing the initial release, and work has started. Stage 4 entails obtaining stakeholder satisfaction with deployment. The opportunity has been addressed, and the software system is ready. In addition, the team has performed incremental releases. The way of working is in place, and the work is under control. The critical selected milestones revolve around stakeholder satisfaction, team performing incremental releases, and work under control. Stage 5 entails obtaining stakeholder satisfaction in use. The opportunity benefit is accrued. Requirements are fulfilled. The team has performed the final release. The way of working is working well, and the work is concluded. The critical selected milestones revolve around stakeholder satisfaction in use. Team has performed the final release, and work is concluded. Project termination entails software system retired, team adjourned, way of working retired, and work closed. The critical selected milestone revolves around work closed. Certain selected milestone states serve as indicators of project success. Of the 43 state transitions in the tables, these 19 selected milestones provide a critical insight into the health and status of the project. When completion of these states is neglected or postponed, the outcome of the project is placed at risk. The table presents the 18 selected milestone states critical to success on a project. Traditional software development, TSD, balances customer, solution, and endeavor spaces. The result is extended schedules, higher costs, and more sustainable work products. Traditional practitioners embrace complete and correct requirements and risk-averse forward planning. Successful traditional alpha state sequencing for selected milestones involve a kickoff where the opportunity is identified and team is selected. Stage 1, pointing the way, where requirements are bounded, software system architecture is selected. Stage 2, digging in, where opportunity value proposition is established, requirements are coherent, the way of working foundation is established. Stage 3, major milestones, where stakeholders are in agreement, requirements are accepted, work is started, and the team begins performing the initial software release. Stage 4, locking in the gains, where stakeholder is satisfied with deployment, where team is performing successive incremental releases, where the work is under control. Stage 5, preparing to stand down, where stakeholder is satisfied in use, opportunity value proposition benefits are being accrued, the work is being performed for the final release, and the way of working is working well. Then there's the project termination, where work is closed. Agile software development, ASD, is endeavor-centric, with a nod to the customer space. Agile practitioners come with built-in resistance to requirements and planning. The result is rapid frequency of product releases, lower costs, and higher technical debt. Successful Agile alpha state sequencing for selected milestones includes: team is selected, the opportunity is selected, the opportunity value proposition is established, the way of working foundation is established, the stakeholder is in agreement, the work is started, the work is performing, the initial release. Stakeholder is satisfied with deployment. The work continues to be performed with successive incremental releases. The work is under control. The stakeholder is satisfied in use. The opportunity value proposition benefit is being accrued. The work is being performed for the final release. The way of working is working well, and work is closed. How a project chooses to navigate the 43 alpha state transitions of the SEMAT Essence Kernel will determine the success or failure of the project. The care and rigor with which the project reasons about predecessor and successor relationships will determine the presence of risks, whether by design or by performance, and whether risks then become problems that defeat the best efforts of the team and its way of working. Systematic rules of construction for tracing alpha state sequencing and reasoning about their stage alignment assist in this effectiveness analysis by identifying the selected milestones that serve either as consequential markers of success or as risk triggers that threaten success and lead to the accumulation of technical debt. The best prescription for success is to adhere to the expectations set forth in the assertions and principles associated with alpha state checkpoints. By pinpointing the 18 alpha states that prove most consequential as either markers of success or risk triggers that threaten success, the project is able to double down on these selected milestones. With a less experienced senior management corps to face increasingly more complex challenges, and faced with the prospect of promoting from within, the U.S. federal government can now turn to the SEMAT Essence Kernel with confidence as the foundation for its government initiative to broaden the skill sets of its senior managers to face the uncertainties of the 21st century. If senior executive service personnel can successfully master the SEMAT Essence Kernel, the impact of the impending experience gap can be mitigated, and readiness to meet the software challenges of the 21st century can be assured. Under the leadership of Defense Advanced Technology and Logistics, DN18L, the conduct of defense industrial-based contractor training in the proper use of SEMAT Essence Kernel through the Defense Acquisition Management College, the National Defense University, and Carnegie Mellon University Software Engineering Institute is an essential part of the way forward. Here is my contact information. I would be happy to receive questions and have discussions with people on this important subject.